Well, hey, my name is Deven Berryhill. I'm the host of this podcast called Creatives Who Thrive. I want to say welcome. Welcome back for those of you who've seen some of our earlier episodes. We're so glad to continue on. The vision of this show is to tell stories from artists who make money to make more art. And this week's guest is a friend I met through my dad's band. This guy, he actually managed the group The Ventures from the 1960s, who had the hit song Walk Don't Run, Hawaii Five-0, Perfidia, and many other songs that they covered throughout the years. They've sold over 130 million records worldwide. They actually outsold the Beatles in Japan, believe it or not, and still, after 60 years, have toured Japan every single year. So Ryan's been a part of that. He's also got his own band, Roxy Roca, which is a touring band that probably does between 250 plus dates a year. He's going to talk about that. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, Ryan Greenblatt. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to this edition of Creatives Who Thrive podcast. Again, I'm your host, Deven Berryhill, and we're on this journey together of learning about stories from artists who make money to make more art. And really, I see this next guest as someone who has really been able to drill down on, I like to call it kind of the metrics side of the music business. Our guest has played in multiple bands, tours regularly with bands now, records and releases music nationally and even internationally. And I met him through my father's band, the Safaris. Were playing with the Ventures, who Ryan also represented in a management capacity. So we kind of met through that and booking those two bands together. But I just am really excited about today, and I'm super thankful. So please welcome Ryan Greenblatt. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thank you, Deven. I'm happy to be here. Congratulations on launching what so far has been an awesome podcast and YouTube series, and, mad props for you, going out on a limb and doing something cool. Take some stones. So, and it's been good so far. I've been enjoying it just as a listener. So it's cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, good. Well, you have an amazing repertoire of things that you've done, and you're a creative in multiple forms, I can tell, whether it be the marketing side, the creative side. You're a drummer. That's probably your first notable thing that I think that you do, but you do so many different other aspects of it in the business side. And I want to get to that too. But before we get to all that, tell us, you're in Austin, Texas still, right?
Yep. I'm here in Austin, Texas.
And that's just a mecca for music, correct?
Yeah. Austin is, it's one of those places similar to like maybe New Orleans or Nashville, where 7 nights a week, at least, pre-pandemic, and it's coming back now, but 7 nights a week, there are a ton of people playing music. And if you are a musician, that means you can make a living here in Austin. You don't even have to tour, really. If you're willing to play the gigs, they're there. And, it has its good and its bad. People here are spoiled. If it's raining, they don't necessarily go to your show because they're like, oh, they'll play next week. But on the other end of that, there's no shortage of venues and opportunities to showcase your art. And people here really respect that community, and they know how vital it is, economically speaking, but also to the culture and even the soul of our town. So definitely.
Well, when I think of Austin, I think of a few things. I think of Antoine's, right? The famous blues club where so many greats have played and come out of, and I also think of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Ray Vaughan. I think of the Archangels. I think of, that whole scene, of course, that was really big in the late 80s, 90s. Amazing scene. And then I also think of something that's really pertinent to what we're talking about, South by Southwest. And that's huge. And also, of course, the pièce de résistance, Austin City Limits, the show. Massive.
Yes.
And then one more thing I think is Willie Nelson, right?
Yeah, I think it's safe to lump Willie in there with anybody who has a giant statue made for them in town. I think you can count as a cultural icon.
He kind of started it, right? He's kind of like the patriarch of the town musically. But So you're in this really neat environment, and for musicians in particular, and the music business. But let's go back. Tell me a little bit of the Ryan Greenblatt story. I mean, how did you get involved with this? And we're going to get back to you because you guys play all those places I just said and have been heavily involved. But you had to start somewhere. Where was your creative being? Give me the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, when I look back at it, I think I chalk it up to a few things. The first is probably my parents. Neither one of them actually played an instrument, not like your folks who are still playing on stage. But they were both huge music fans. And our household, whether it was we're cooking dinner or cleaning the house or whatever, always had a record on, always, and I'm 35. So when I was really young, it was a lot of like Michael Jackson. My dad is a huge Motown guy. So a lot of Stevie Wonder, and also within the times, really big Bruce Springsteen fans. And, just growing up, my parents were, I'm very lucky. My parents were super supportive of me. And, when I was 8, without them, asking or anything, I asked for drum lessons. I grew up on a block with a lot of other kids, and I think there was a bunch of older kids who said, let's start a band. And, the older kids, there was like pecking order, right? So the older kids got to choose their instruments first. I mean, none of us knew what we were doing, so keep that in mind. But, they all chose guitar and, that kind of stuff. And I chose drums. And we also had a family friend who had like a Neil Peart style, humongous drum set, the kind of thing that a kid would look at and just like, head exploding kind of thing. And he was super gracious and let me mess around on his kit. And, as my dad tells the story, basically he thought, it was another fad, just like how I had played baseball for a second and soccer. He was like, okay, what's this going to cost me? And so they bought me some lessons and a practice pad. And they thought, we'll give them 6 months. But for whatever reason, I think I had some natural ability and I just kind of stuck to it. So those things in combination, that, and you know what? And I know this probably sounds funny to younger listeners, maybe, or maybe even older ones, but MTV, straight up,
Sure.
MTV really was music television. And I was obsessed, like really obsessed. Like I can remember waking up before school to watch music videos. I had a tape in my VCR to tape stuff, tape the music videos so I could listen to it over and over again. Same thing with cassettes, listening and taping over the radio. I'm still probably maybe the last generation to do that. I was very influenced by what was going on in the 90s. And very early on, I had an opinion about what music I liked. I mean, the first tape I got was the Cocktail soundtrack. because I was obsessed with that Bobby McFerrin song, Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Be happy. Yeah. Yeah.
But on that record or that album, there's like Tutti Frutti is on there and a couple, Kokomo,
Right.
just like
Beach Boys.
It introduced me to some classic bands, American rock and roll, if you will. And that opened a lot of other doors for me. That's really where it started, the inspiration to play music. And, I was just like any other kid. I was obsessed. Put on a CD, get the booklet out, read through it, learn about who everyone was. I mean, I used to be able to recount like every player and every band I loved and, which track numbers the songs were and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I was definitely, hooked on music from a very early age, but certainly was my parents first. And then, the neighborhood kids and MTV, I guess.
I want to comment on that real quick about parents of drummers in particular. I was just literally yesterday morning, I had this conversation with a couple of friends of mine. I was recounting one of my students. I used to be a music teacher, and one of my students who plays drums went on to play with a really large band who still tours today, and plays arenas and stadiums occasionally kind of guy, Whoa. And I knew his parents really well. His dad and I became really close friends, actually still are. And they all live in Nashville now, but I really have a heart. I mean, you've got to love the parent of a drummer, right? Because you think about.
Absolutely.
The kids go to school one day. I just have this picture of, kids go to first day of school and they're like sixth grade or whatever. And it's like, Mommy, Daddy, the band director came to my class and said they're having tryouts for the band. And, anyway, I went and tried out and guess what? The band director said I was really good at drums.
Yeah.
I could just see, Mom and Dad just like, couldn't you have like picked the, oboe, the piccolo, something a little quieter, a little more subdued, drum set, not even just, drums, like a
totally
like one snare or something, so.
Well, I was going to say credit to my parents. They bought me that pad. And that was it for like the first year. And my teacher was really quick to be like, don't buy him a drum set. Maybe you can buy him a snare drum, but really he just needs a pad and a metronome and a tape recorder. Cause he wanted me to tape my practices.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get a drum set maybe for 2 years. And then even then they didn't buy any cymbals. They literally didn't. It was like just the drums, like a bass drum, 2 toms, and it was like early 90s Pearl export. So it was like Dennis Chambers, Dandelion Yellow, and huge drums, I feel like drums have gotten much more concise. Like these were like huge, deep drums, and that's it. No cymbals. And it was like, okay, keep practicing and maybe we'll buy you those cymbals. They really made me earn the drum kit and, prove that I wasn't going to waste their money, I guess. But I mean, bless my parents. They dealt with a lot because the drummer is always also the guy who hosts the practice. And I certainly had a lot of like afternoons after school or weekends where the band came to my house to play in the garage or in the guest room where sometimes work because it was so hot. In Houston, I grew up in Houston, Texas, and it gets hot. So couldn't always play in the garage. And they just put up with it. I don't think they even had earplugs. I don't know how they did it, but there's no question we were bad at points. So
we all were. Well, and also I was thinking of your neighbors too.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've got funny stories from almost every decade of my life about that. There's been some old ornery neighbor who one guy tried to forcibly close the garage door. I remember maybe when I was like 15, like in the middle of the afternoon, not even at night. He just like, his pants were like up to here and he was just like super agitated. about the music. One time when in school in New Orleans, I was living in an apartment and had for years been playing and no one minded. But I guess someone did this day and the cops came, and I tried to reason with them because I was already like gigging professionally kind of in college. And I was like, this is kind of my job. And they were like, look, if we get one more call, you're going to jail. So I had to stop playing in my house. I've definitely dealt with that. The drummer, you really, it's hard. I mean, it's hard for all of us, I think. So many of my friends now, because we've all been stuck in our homes from the pandemic, I have like a 24/7 studio for me with my drums and stuff. And whenever someone comes over now, and they can crank their amp or whatever, they're like, oh my God, I haven't been able to do this in like a year. They're always playing on headphones through their amps and stuff.
Right.
But totally.
Yeah. No, I have a special appreciation for the parents of drummers. That's for sure. So, okay. So you're in college and you're starting to get into some paid bands where you're maybe making a little bit playing locally, maybe in the Houston area. Take us from there. How did we get from there to here?
So I went to college in New Orleans, and I didn't major in music, but I auditioned and was able to play for one of the jazz, like school sanctioned jazz quartets, all 4 years of college. And that was a huge education for me.
Sure.
It was led by like a local cat, if you will, a saxophone player named John Doheny. And he's an old head, and I think there was a lot of education with just playing, getting better at reading music, reading charts, learning, not just jazz, because in New Orleans, you got to learn your second line stuff. You gotta know how to play what the city wants. And that was a big part too. So, but also, being really young and interacting with older, experienced players, that was like a totally new thing for me and taught me stuff that I still use today, basically how to have respect and show respect to people in the industry so that you get called back for the next gig. I can't really stress that enough. Like, learn it as quick as you can, because if, no matter how good you are, if you're not a good hang, you're not going to get the gig. It's just how it is. So, going to school in New Orleans, I want to back up just a little bit, because in high school in Houston, there were some venues that allowed bands to play. And so my first like experience really like on stage and getting paid for a show and having to do like all the things, I don't think most people consider, like, you got to pack up your gear, load in, have the sound check, all those things. The first time you do it, you're in the deep end and you have no idea what to expect or what that's like. And getting that education at a young age, I think, was really important. And, we didn't have like an older person to show us the way. It was very much like learning on the fly. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that experience. And I also, because there weren't very many venues, when I was 16, I produced a show where my friend and I raised some money and we rented out like a theater at the local Jewish community center, actually. And we booked like 5 bands that went to various high schools in my area. And like, we had like a sound engineer and lights, and we hired and we did tickets and the whole thing. And that was a really big thing too, because, one, there just wasn't much. It was hard to play, as not a 21 or even 18-year-old. It was hard you couldn't go to bars and stuff. But also, it was the beginning of this thing that I kind of started to learn, where it was like, if you can imagine it, you can probably make it happen. The limitations you set on yourself are really what stops you from achieving something. Most of the time, obviously, there are a lot of things that are hard to obtain, but things like that, which I'll talk about later. But anyways, so in college, I played jazz, and I did private study there with some really awesome local New Orleans drummers. This guy, Kevin O'Day, he was like really a big mentor for me. And he let me sub for him when he got too many gigs, and he let me drum tech for him at gigs. And both of those things were really big for me because,
Sure.
going to a gig with him as his drum tech, setting up for him, helping him tune. And then he would always inevitably, without letting me know ahead of time, he'd call me up on stage to play a song I'd never heard before with guys I've never played with before. But it's like, that's what you need, that's like the easiest way to progress, is to get thrown into the fire and just have to like, just go for it. And I mean, coming out on the other side is like such a confidence booster, after doing that a few times, by the time I was finishing college, even before I went to college, honestly, I thought I was going to just play music right away. And my parents, we kind of made a deal. They really thought it was important for me to get a degree. And so I said, okay, if I get a degree, will you, no questions asked, let me pursue music after college? And they were really good about that. But by the time I was leaving college, after all this experience with my drum teacher and stuff, I felt good. I felt like I belonged in that, in the industry. Like I can cut it, and that was a big thing. And then when I moved to Austin in 2008, it was, economic downturn. It was like right in the midst of everything, all the stuff hitting the fan. And I couldn't get a job for my life. Like, at first I thought, okay, I'll move to Austin and, I have this new degree. I'll find like a part-time job or something, and start some bands. But in a way, it was almost fortunate that no one was hiring, because it was like, well, you know what? There's no better time than now to just go 100% into this thing, and just do it. And that's what I ended up doing. Like within weeks of being there, I was playing in 3 bands and regularly gigging. And within a year, I had already booked my first tour and was on the road. So, I mean, like I said before, something I learned really quickly was that if you want to do something in this industry, you can do it. Like I had this mindset that only big bands tour, and only, so-and-so will get record labels to pay attention and all these things. Right. And it was based on my perception of the industry almost as a fan, not really as someone who worked in the industry. And, of course, we all grew up idolizing our rock star people. And so we put them on this huge pedestal, and my bandmate, the guy I started a band with in 2008, he basically said, no, man, we can do whatever we want. We just have to make it happen for ourselves. And so he kind of taught me that ethos, and that unlocked like a huge part of my brain. I mean, like, if you have a really strong imagination, the industry is a great place to come up with something conceptually so weird and so off the wall that it wouldn't work anywhere else, but it could actually work in the music industry. And it's fun for that reason. Like you were saying, I'm a drummer and a musician, and that's probably my baseline for being an artist. But, getting creative with marketing and with touring and all the other things that you're kind of forced to do and, DIY style as a young musician, those are all real creative outlets as well. And,
sure.
I hit the ground running after I graduated college around when I was 22, and kind of never looked back, just like kept going. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. And so, as I can imagine, you probably went through different tiers of success monetarily.
Yeah.
As you got out of college, you got in some bands, you started your first tour. What was kind of the next threshold there for you, that zone?
So, it went like this, I guess. I was the band that I started ended up becoming the priority. I got fired from one band for going on tour, and they weren't willing to wait around for me, not even get a sub or whatever. And I quit another band and just focus on the one where I was kind of in charge. And like I'm sure a lot of other bands have had this experience, or artists. We just slowly paid our dues. First it was, can you get 20 people here on a Sunday? Can you get 100 people here on a Wednesday? Can you blah, blah, and we worked our way through the ranks into basically this kind of cycle where we would play local shows and regional shows, saving up our money, paying each other out little bits here. I was always, working. I did a lot of service industry stuff. I was working in food trailers or waiting tables, bartending, to make enough money to pay my rent, and supplementing it with the music stuff. But then the tour cycle started to get really crazy. I mean, for years, I was probably on the road, 6 months out of the year, even before I got to the band that ended up being the one that allowed me to quit all my other jobs. It just became like a lifestyle, and I was into it. I mean, we were young and it was fun. And similar to now, the easiest way to make the most money in the industry was to play shows. So, I don't know, I've probably been in something like 7 or 8 bands from when I would say I started my professional career around 2008. And each one, would either reach a sort of level and then break up for whatever reason. And none of them up until about 2015 were really moving the needle past maybe like enough for us to, well, okay, I'm proud to say that I've never gone on a tour that has lost money. So, and I've been on a lot of tours. And so that was always the goal. It was always small things like that. Like, can we make enough that this is worth our while and it doesn't cost us anything personal to do it? And that was like a good, I would encourage anyone, you set out small goals to achieve a larger goal at the end. Mm-hmm. And so the small goals were like, hey, could we take home a few $100 a month from our playing? Then it was, can we take home $1,000 each? And, I'll say this too. I've been in bands where it was a trio, and I've been in bands where there's like 9 of us, and it's a lot harder to make money when there's 9 of you. So
and travel and expenses.
Yeah, totally. So, but yeah, so always achieving these smaller goals. And then, as the story goes, I was in this metal band actually, and my lead guy got into a horrible motorcycle accident. Mm-hmm. And he's fine now and stuff, but it effectively ended the band. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make this huge transition. I want to go back to playing soul, funk, that kind of thing. So I put an ad out to form my own band. And when I did that, the band I play in now, Roxy Roca, saw my ad, and they contacted me to come in and audition for them. Huh. And I actually didn't get the job. Funny enough, they told me later they questioned whether or not I would be like all in, like my commitment level, which is funny because now I've been in the band for 6 years. So haha. But
there you go.
anyways, they chose this other person. And after about 3 months, they were like, okay, we made a huge mistake. And they called me back. And I ended up taking the drum chair in January 2015. And with that, they were like, quit all your jobs because you don't have time anymore. You don't. And I didn't. I mean, I was waiting tables and working in food trucks and, doing whatever I had to do to be a musician, and that's something that I'll also say, and I told this to my parents because sometimes they would be like, why don't you just go to law school, or why don't you, come on, when are you going to change your tune here and just, get a real job or whatever. And I would always say to them, look, if I got clean bathrooms to play drums, then so be it. That's just my desire to do this was that, and whatever it took. whatever. So in 2015, that was the first time where I literally made only money from the music industry. And since then, I pretty much have said to myself that I want to try to make my living solely from the industry, not necessarily always as a player, but I've accrued a bunch of knowledge basically through the musician school of hard knocks. I've had to wear so many different hats over the years. The biggest through line in my career probably is that for whatever reason, I end up being like the de facto business person in the band, even when I wasn't the oldest person in the band, because in my early years as a musician, I was playing so much, I probably had the most experience. And I've always had the ethos that, I think it's easy to get caught up in thinking about what's fair. You're in a band with a bunch of other guys or guys and girls, and you think, I'm going to do my share and they should do their share.
Right.
But, something that I kind of took upon myself basically was that that's not necessarily always going to happen. And I thought to myself, well, I want to reach this height, or, I want to do these things.
Right.
And kind of like what I was saying with, if I got to scrub toilets to play drums, then so be it. If I got to do 2 other people's jobs to get us this gig or whatever it was, then so be it. And I mean, that's, yeah.
That's huge. I wanted to park on that for a second before we move on. Because you're covering in your story really a lot of what we're going to talk about later anyway. So this is great. It's kind of more chronological. That whole concept right there, what you said, that's true leadership. I mean, we've talked about this in a couple other episodes of being willing to, like you said, it's like, what are your goals? You set some goals. You set some short-term goals. You have some long-term goals, and you've got, like, everybody wants to be Stevie Wonder, right? Or Elvis kind of thing. We all have that kind of pie in the sky, but there's a lot of spaces in between that you can make a living. You can do it as a side hustle at whatever level you want to do it. Like you say, if you want, whatever you kind of want to do, you can do if you put your mind to it, kind of thing, and your effort. And I like that leadership model, because right there, even though you were maybe younger, you saw, listen, I have acumen, I have experience, I have a gift to be able to do the business, the marketing, the booking. And you did that at 16, right? That first big show, you were like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is not rocket science for you, at least. And so a lot of artists tend to shy away from that. They're like, okay, they're very segmented in, they're thinking of, well, I'm the songwriter, or I'm the performer, I'm the lead singer, I'm the, this and that. And you're like, well, hey, wait a second. You can't just come with one. It's like a bouquet of flowers. It's like, okay, you need to come with a bouquet here. You're not just coming with one rose, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So you were able to provide the band, not only like when you got into Roxy Roca, eventually they tried you out as a drummer, but they probably didn't know all the benefit. You might have shared a little bit, or they saw your resume, bio, whatever, but they probably had no idea that you had the acumen to come in and now start booking their tours. And, and instead of driving in the old van, you got the new van. Right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, to take, for example, Roxy Roca, when I joined the band, I was the very bottom person in the totem pole, right? And that was a 7-person band at the time. And they had a lot of things going for them. They were on a record label. They had a new record that was about to come out, and they had a bunch of money behind it for promo. And they had just gotten signed with a really great booking agent, a lot of things. So what they needed from the band was help specifically with promotion. We were about to tour a ton, and on top of like ads and stuff, we were still doing things that, maybe now I wouldn't think are as useful, but like flyers, like for hours I would go through, find every record store in blah, 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 Kansas, and then call them all on the phone, tell them who I was, what the band was about, and be like, hey, what would you think if I sent you some flyers? Would you put them up in your window? And over my first like 9 months in that band, because I was willing to do more than just play. And let me say, the dream is just playing. If that was all I had to do, I would love it. That's all I really want to do. But, like I said, it has to get done. So if no one's going to do it, I'll do it. I would rather try my hardest and fail than, sit on my hands and be like, that's not fair. So that's just me though. But yeah, so within like 9 months of proving that I was willing to work and do these things, I kind of jumped some people in seniority. And, something I feel very fortunate for is I ended up being the person for Roxy Roca after about 9 months who started to advance the shows. And for people who don't really know what that means like the booking agent would book a show and agree on a few things, but a lot of the terms are kind of fluid at that point. Like when you need to be at the club, what time your set is, how long it is, maybe those things. And then it's up to either like a tour manager or someone in the band who's acting as tour manager, me, to contact that club and kind of hash out all these details and then keep the band informed, so that everybody's on time and ready to go and all that stuff. And, I had done that to a certain degree in other bands where I was, booking and doing all that. But, Roxy Roca was a whole new level of professionalism comparatively to all of my other bands. I'd had some really cool experiences with other bands playing big festivals and stuff, but Roxy Roca was a whole other entity. I mean, Roxy Roca, to its credit, when I joined the band that first year, we played 230 something shows. We had 2 weekly residencies, which you need if you're going to play 200 shows. You got to play like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, basically. And we just worked our butt off. And so I'm so grateful for that experience because I feel competent in our industry to do so much because I was, again, thrown into the fire, like, hey, this is how I've done it in the past, but you might need to find how it works best for you and just do it and make sure the wheels don't fall off kind of thing, and gaining that experience and making those connections with the talent buyers and kind of getting this geographical outlook on the club scene, theater scene around the United States was super helpful. And when I eventually got the job at the Ventures, I was already primed to help them out. I had a bunch of experience with exactly what they needed and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's interesting what you were talking about, the advance part of it, because this is when you get to the fly date or the tour thing. I remember with the Safaris with my dad's band, who I play second guitar for the last better part of 20 years, basically now. But so many times we would find that we get a fly date or a few dates in a certain area, and it was always the guitar amps for us because we're a guitar band. An instrumental, mostly instrumental, of course, the song Wipeout, but we do all the classics, Pipeline, like the Ventures do, Walk That Line kind of stuff, Dick Dale, Miserlou, these kind of songs. And the voice, the lead vocal really for the band is the guitar, that surf guitar sound with the reverb, our sound needing a little more of a boutique Fender early 60s, with the old reverb box plugged in thing. And I really got into the advanced part of it myself, of calling each place we're going to play and going, okay, do you have the Fender Twin we're talking about? We want the reissue 1965 Fender Twin, because if you give me that 1990s red knob, the Twin, that sounds like garbage, it ain't going to work. You're not getting the Safaris. You're going to get, something else. That's not us. And it's like we'd show up and they'd assure me, yeah. And I'd be like, okay, I want to see a picture of it. They'd be like, oh. And then I'd get it, and sure enough, there's the red knob, 1996, the Twin, the whole thing. And I'm like, no, guys, you have to understand, this is our lead vocal. This is what we do. And they're like, well, why can't you play it? When BB King was here, he played through it. We're like, BB's great. We're not BB. We're the Safaris, And so I don't know for you. I mean, do you have any advice for those of us out there in the
I think you're exactly right. You have to be your own advocate. Nothing will get done. You cannot ever assume that something is just going to get done. Same thing with like if you have a writer,
tech writer.
And like it's kind of comical because some people, you hit on a few things. One, it's amazing, right? How many people, talent buyers, people who work in clubs who don't really understand why you would make a fuss about an amp. And it's like, it seems so obvious, right? This is our sound and it's based on this sort of thing. You want us here. We're flying to get to you. So we can't bring it up ourselves. So you need to help provide that, or or the show won't be what it's supposed to be. And so, sometimes you show up somewhere and they've read everything you've sent to them and they've done it to a T. And sometimes you show up and they haven't done anything. And the best way to combat that really is to stay on their butt. It's like a polite persistency, basically, or persistence. Like you got to be really persistent and kind and just make sure you advocate for yourself. And then, if you can spot it early enough, you got to make other plans. Improv is not just part of the music. It's part of tour life in general, making something out of nothing, and I mean, like the Ventures, they did have some very like stringent rules about certain things, like you're talking about with backline. And I would have to call, certain backline people based on what brands they carry, because certain certain like brands such as DW drums, that's Leon Taylor, the drummer for the Ventures, is a DW endorsee. And, he insists, rightfully so, on using DW at any gig. And they, similar to the Safaris, they do a lot of fly dates, and you rely either on the club or, someone like SIR to provide your backline. And even someone as good as SIR won't necessarily, look at all the very nuanced instructions you've given them. And you just got to follow up and be prepared to possibly scramble within hours of the show to figure out how to get what's right. Just happens sometimes. And just, keep your head and stay positive throughout, because, as they say, the show must go on.
Sure.
Well,
hey, I want to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
That was all super good, by the way. Thank you. I want to talk about metrics. One of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had with you has been you breaking down the metrics of how you count everything the band does. I mean, I'm sure maybe somebody does this, but I've never been in that place where, I mean, like when I say count, I mean, like the band will play, how many pieces of merch were sold at the table from like 10 years ago. This, you have it in a ledger somewhere. You're that guy. You've counted every little, we did this many miles and gas was that. And we got paid this at this club at this rate for playing 2 sets. But the last time we played there, we did 3 sets and we made this much. You're that guy. Share how this, I mean, that's very vast, but if you could kind of give us again, kind of a little bit of shape to that, what's the benefit of that and how would we do that?
Okay. So, to boil it down to one thing is probably leverage, a lot of success for your band is going to be based on, how you do at a show or how you're doing with your streaming stuff or your views, your likes, etc. Right? In the past, I wish I was a little older just so I could have experienced this. I talked to some guys, maybe you could have some experience with this, where if you were from, Los Angeles and you wanted to play in San Francisco, you called the club, you told them what you were about, they took a chance on you and they put up flyers, and then the guys in town, the guys and girls would see a flyer coming from LA and they'd be like, oh, a band from LA is coming. I really want to see what it's about. They didn't have a way to really check you out. Maybe they had, a 7-inch or something in the local store, but there's no streaming, there's no YouTube, and people just took a chance, came to shows. Now that's not the case, unfortunately. Now it's really based on, booking agents and talent buyers and people. They want proof that you're worth the value that you think you're worth, I don't want to say this is like the hard and fast rules, because there are always exceptions. If you have a really great song, like that's what it really, I want to pause for a second and just say, you need great songs. If you don't have great songs in our industry, you're not going to go anywhere. And a great song could open some doors for you potentially. So that's, just keep that in mind with everything else. But so I say leverage because, like I was saying with the first band I was in when I moved to Austin, we did that thing where we moved through the ranks in clubs where they wouldn't allow you to play on a Friday or Saturday unless they knew you were going to bring a crowd. And the only way to do that was to, bring a crowd on off nights first. And in order to book those other shows, if you're booking with the same club, then yeah, they'd have the record of how many people you brought in and they can look at it. But say you want to go on tour.
Right.
Now, how do you convince them that you'll bring X amount of people? You've never been there before. Right. And the way to do that is to point to your tour history. And so for all my bands, and I do this like from day one, like don't wait till you're already a year or two down the line and you don't remember any of this stuff. Do it the day you have your first show or the day after. I write down, was it a free show or what was the cover? How many people paid the cover? How much did we walk with at the end of the night? If I sold merch, I try to write down which items were sold, how many, at what price point, et cetera, because all of this info can help inform your next stuff. It can leverage you to get a better slot on a showcase. It can leverage you to get a better night. It can leverage you to get a show out of town. For instance, something I showed you. So we were talking about it a little earlier. There's a website called chartmetric.com. Chartmetric is basically an aggregator for many other website analytics. So like with Spotify for artists, you can check out geographically where you're getting streams. And with YouTube analytics, you can see where and how many people are streaming your stuff. Chartmetric puts all of these things on top of each other. So you can look at them all together and you can compare yourself to other bands. It's not a free service. They do have free versions. And actually, since we talked about it, I think they came out with a cheaper version for working musicians. So check that out. But basically, like you can use, you can go to the map on, say, bands in town or Spotify for artists and look at, for instance, in Dallas, my band is getting streamed so many times a day by so many people. Mm-hmm. I want to play Dallas. Or maybe you didn't know it, but you have a fan base in Dallas. And now that tells you I should go play it. And then when I talk to a club owner or a buyer, talent buyer, I can use that information to say, hey, I think you should let us play your club for X amount of money. Or, you've got to, sometimes they want a door deal. That's a whole other thing. There's a lot of different ways to get paid in the industry, suffice it to say. And you use this as leverage for why they should book you or why they should let you be the opener for that nationally touring band or whatever. The importance of getting the information about like your merch sales and stuff is that what sells. Why would you keep remaking a shirt that nobody buys? Or why would you keep making CDs if for whatever reason the demographic that comes to your shows isn't buying CDs anymore? We found that more people wanted to buy vinyl records than CDs. So it was worth it to us to pay a little more upfront to have vinyl made because we knew it would sell. These things can just help you inform. They help inform you to make better decisions, and help you increase efficiency in your band. And I know that stuff is like boring and not fun, but it can really help you out, and definitely can help you out. Like the difference between, maybe you think, oh, I really love New Orleans, I want to go play in New Orleans. It might be fun, but if you didn't check, like, is anyone streaming me in New Orleans? Does anyone even know who we are in New Orleans? It could be the difference between you showing up to nobody at your show and showing up to like a big crowd. It also helps, like, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they all have ads, right? And comparatively to like putting an ad in a newspaper or putting a billboard up or something, they're much cheaper, and they give you statistics. Like the reason I said before that sending flyers to places is not necessarily something I would do anymore is because you really can't know how many people are at your show or bought your album or whatever because they saw a flyer. But I can 100% know how many people saw my ad or how many people clicked it, and having that information, it helps you create better ads so that you can get more people to look at your music. Because a big thing, now is like, while so many more people now can record because equipment is cheaper and all that stuff, and the gates are open to more people, it also, and I think you've touched on this in some of your other episodes, there's so much more noise to cut through, and these analytics and statistics can help you figure out the best way to do that. Even just knowing who your demographic is, because in your head you might think, oh, surely my demographic is people just like me, But then you look at the stats and it says the people who like you the most are women between 45 and 60. And you're like, well,
what?
Okay.
That's a different
I guess we got to start focusing on that. And that could be the difference between you making a living and, basically hitting your head against a wall for no reason.
No.
Yeah.
That's all good. One of the things, I was going on Roxy Roca's, the links that you had sent me. And by the way, we're going to have all these links. I'll have these in the show notes to your groups and the different resources like Chartmetric. Another one I noticed you used was Linktree, where it was a nice consolidation of everything. Tell us about that.
Linktree has a premium service for money, but they also have a free version, which I take advantage of. And you might have noticed it if you're an Instagram user, because Instagram allows you to put a link in your profile, but it's one single link. Unless you're a business profile and you have a certain amount of followers, then they start to open it up differently for you. But if you're just a regular user or like a band that's starting out and doesn't have like 1 million followers or even 10,000 followers, Linktree allows you to basically set up a splash page, and you can put, I think, an unlimited amount of links to stuff that, for instance, for my band on our Linktree, you can go to the website, you can go to the Facebook, you can go to the store, you can go directly to Spotify, and it's all there, and it's not even in URL. So it's not like a bunch of gibberish. It's like I got to choose what it says. So it says, check us out on Spotify or get a free song, and you can change it as much as you want. And it's been an amazing resource because, from a booking perspective,
right.
If I'm writing a booking email to someone, the last thing I want to do is like write them a short novel. They get 1 million emails and they want just the hard and fast facts, and the Linktree is excellent for that, because instead of me being like, check out all my links, it's like, hey, this is one link and it basically gives you the keys to everything you could ever want to check out. Right. So yeah, if you Google Linktree, you can go set one up for free. And the free ones are great. I mean, the paid ones, I think you can trick out the design and the appearance a little more, but it serves the same purpose. Yeah.
I went on yours and I'm like, it's almost like an EPK, but it's like even better. I thought, you could have an EPK even in it, but it was almost kind of that one-stop shop, all things Roxy Roca, from, your website bio, whatever, it's almost like a beyond the website where it does bring in and it was just like little slices, little buttons,
like little bullet points.
Yeah. And it was like Spotify, YouTube, and it just takes you right to your hit song right at the top. Boom. Check out our new single on Spotify. Bam. Check out our new video on Spotify. Here's our website, EPK. Here's our, our concert. It was just so much easier. I could see, like you said, a promoter or a record label or somebody, but particularly for promoters and agents and that kind of thing, make it real easy.
Yeah. I think another thing just to add to that, I think it sucks, but you will get judged by other people based on what technology you use. So like if you're still on the old platform, like it'd be like if I sent you a link to MySpace right now, you'd be like, what is this guy doing with MySpace? Right. And you can get written off because of that. So keeping, aware of new tech, such as the link tree, which really isn't even that, that's not complicated at all. I think it's a really important thing because you don't want anyone to, think you're out of touch or something like that. Because then maybe their imagination runs a little wild and they're like, well, what are they going to be like at the show? Or will they even know how to advertise? Because they're sending me the wrong link now. So so that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So we've got a little bit of time left, but I do want to kind of get into what you're doing now. I mean, since we're talking about Roxy Roca, and you've got a new group you're working with, Bourgeois Mystics. Tell us about what do you got coming out? We're coming out of this COVID period, starting to look like to open up some shows this summer and probably touring in the fall. What do you got going now?
Yeah, so it's been, it was a tough year. I can't say much more than, and everyone, no matter if you're an artist or not, I'm sure we're all very thankful to be looking like we're coming out on the other side now. So for Roxy Roca, our most recent release came out just at the end of 2020. And that was a song called Mind Blown with a music video that went along with it. And basically what's going on with us is we have some more demos that I think we want to do to record. And hopefully by the fall, like you said, I think we will start actively playing again. One of the consequences of the pandemic has been that in both of my bands, actually, there's been some turnover just because everybody has different, everyone's feelings toward what is safe and what isn't are a little different, I guess is the best way to put it. And so not everyone has been ready to jump right back in with 2 feet, or with both feet. So, I always say this, we're all chasing our dreams here. And if your bandmate, gets an opportunity, don't hold it against them, give them a slap on the back, tell them good luck, wish them the best, and let them go. Because like I said, it's like a golden rule kind of thing. If you got the opportunity, wouldn't you want your bandmate to support you? So we got a little bit of that going on. So I got some things up in the air right now, but Roxy Roca is still doing really well. And I don't want to talk too much about the irons we have in the fire because there's some exciting things that I want to keep under wraps for now. But I think that, by the fall, we'll probably be back in a big way. And, we got some new material that I'm really excited about. And so that's really cool. Bourgeois Mystics is a band that I joined right before the pandemic. It's a really fun, funky, like hip hop meets the B-52s kind of weird mashup. It's super eccentric, super fun. And we've been recording a full-length album throughout the pandemic. Fortunately, one of the guys in the band has an excellent studio that we've been able to use throughout. And I'm really proud of that. And I can't wait for that to come out. I think that'll probably get released either toward the end of the year or maybe at the beginning of 2022. I've never played on a record as weird as this. It's just like odd time signatures and a lot of funky synthesizer and just I'm just really proud of it. It's not like, I can't think of anybody who really sounds like that. And that was really fun for me to be a part of, to do something super creative and super weird, to be honest.
Sure.
It was just really fulfilling. And if you want to check them out, we came out with a single and a music video during the pandemic for a song called Biomimicry, which some people call the chicken song. And if you watch the video, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So those are the biggest things I have going on as far as career-wise. I'm considering kind of starting to mentor musicians. As you may tell, I have a lot of info that I've kind of gathered over the years from doing it myself. And out of a desire actually to have my own mentor, somebody, to help guide my career. I guess I've seen this need, there's plenty of people who are in the position I was 10 years ago. And, I don't know if I'll end up monetizing it. Maybe eventually I will, but at first, I just want to help guide some people, bands or artists, so that they don't waste time. The good and bad of DIY is, you learn everything firsthand through experience, but you also you end up making a few mistakes. You take a few steps back for every step forward you take, and I feel like I could be useful to some people to help them, through their career, or at least the beginning of their career, so they can maybe streamline it a little more than,
Sure.
some of my projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Mentoring's huge. I mean, that's when I went into education teaching, I found it so rewarding that I was signed to a label when I got my first teaching position. And I remember my record company owner coming up to me. It was a small independent label here in San Diego. And, him going, "Why did you take a teaching job?" And I said, "I don't know, man, but I feel really good showing high schoolers how to play in a band. There's something in me that is fulfilled in sharing," because I'd played in a number of bands and, with my dad here and there too, even as a kid. And, there's something super rewarding inherently about helping out somebody else. You're giving, they always say it's better to give than to receive, and there's
Amen.
something, a quality of life that I received. And through giving, even today, like I mentioned, one of my students is a drummer in a A-list band, and man, he got me hooked up. Actually, I played with that band for a season, got to play some of the bigger shows I've ever played, was filling in for them. And it led to other opportunities and things. And even today, I'm friends with a lot of former students that I had teaching for 18 years who come out of the woodwork and go, "Mr. Berryhill, you don't remember me, but back in 7th grade, I was in your guitar class. And I have to tell you, now I'm this guy and I use my guitar to, I work in my local YMCA and, I pull out the guitar and we go to camp and these kids are getting off drugs." And, it's like, whoa, I had a small piece in that story, and there's something that's super rewarding and fulfilling as a creative that I was able to impart what I learned. So I hope the best for you in that. And I hope once you get, maybe if you continue on, you maybe come back when you got something more developed there. Cause that's really the heart of this show. Creatives Who Thrive is, it's not just using it for yourself, but maybe making a difference in the world that's greater than yourself. I think
totally. I mean, community is a big thing, and being a part of your music scene. And, maybe this is a drummer thing, but there's really no competition, between drummers. Like, there's a really great group here in Austin, of professional drummers, and we talk, we chat, we share gigs, and no one, resents someone for their gig. It's not how it works. I want to foster that to the younger generations, because maybe they're not aware that that's like the best way to operate, you know. I think it's easy because, you know, we're all vying for the same couple of spots, right? But I don't believe going about it in a negative or hyper competitive way is necessarily the best way to do it. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. I think, you know, something that I'm passionate about perhaps doing as, you know, the years go on is, as much as Austin is a great music city, Austin doesn't really have the music business infrastructure that, you know, Nashville, Los Angeles, New York has. And there's one BMI office here now, and that's like really it. You know, there's a lot of local labels and stuff like that. And no question, you know, people from the industry know they have to come to Austin to see showcases and stuff. South by Southwest, you know, that whole thing. But yeah, if I could help shepherd the city into some more serious professional side of music, I would love to help do that.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see. Story's not written yet.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're kind of wrapping things up, but I always ask this one last question. And you've already imparted so much wisdom, so maybe it could be a repeat. But if you were to go back, you're 35, but if you were to go back to maybe the 16 or the 20-year-old Ryan Greenblatt and give him a little piece of advice, what would that be?
I thought about this one because you sent over these questions. So what I wrote down was take more chances. And what I mean by that is, you know, I think, at least for me, you know, I moved away from home, but I didn't leave Texas necessarily. And, you know, taking that chance and going for it in LA or going for all these cliche things that you hear about, a lot of them are true. You know, you got to go where the industry is if you really want to do it. So taking more chances, something like it's okay to play the game. And what I mean by that is when I was young, as a DIY with this like punk ethos, I pretty much put my nose up at, you know, a lot of different things in the industry because I thought it wasn't cool or that you got to do it yourself and you can't get help. You know, you can't hire people to help you with your stuff or I don't know, not some nonsense things that I think I had picked up, you know, from my music scene and being a young person. And I think it made things hard on me and my bandmates because, I mean, these were even things as far as like, I was in a band where we didn't want to play 5/4 ones. We didn't want to do those like tried and true chord progressions and stuff because for whatever reason, we were like, no, too many people do that. We got to do other things, you know, and that made for really weird harmonies that were really hard to pull off, stuff like that. You know, like I would say to my younger self, like, you don't have to make it more difficult on yourself, you know, like, and then the last thing I think is to forgive quicker and be less stubborn. And I think this is a thing a lot of young people can listen or learn from, you know, bands are not permanent. And as a drummer, I was in a lot of bands that broke up for no reason that I had anything to do with, you know, people left it or whatever, you know. And when I was a young person, it was hard for me, you know, to separate the people from the band. And when they broke it up or whatever, I got angry and I held it against them. And I would say you got to forgive people and you got to let the anger go. Just let it go. It's not serving you at all. It's not. So, you know, like forgive people and don't be stubborn. Don't let some sort of principle that you have be the reason why you don't talk to your friend for 5 years or something along those lines. You know, I mean, obviously certain things, you know, you got to have principles and you got to have some lines that are drawn because certain things are that important. But I'm talking about, you know, petty things. Let it go. That's what I would say to my young self because I was stubborn. You know, I wasn't willing to necessarily make the effort for someone else to salvage a relationship or whatever, you know? And something I've learned as I've gotten older is that, you know, life is about the people that you have in it, you know, and those connections and, you know, love and anger and those kind of things. Who has time for it? So let it go. Be quick to, you know, to get rid of that, I think. Yeah.
Huge. Yeah, that's great. Really appreciate this time that you've spent. I know you're coming out and probably got a lot of things on your plate, and you took the time to speak to this audience. And I know that I look forward to seeing you again. I think last time you were here, well, the time you were here in town, my dad and I went and saw you at Winston's in Ocean Beach here in San Diego. And I don't know if you know, but through COVID, Winston shut down after being a club there for 25, 30 years.
A long time.
A casualty.
R.I.P. Winston's OB.
Yeah. So next time you're in town, you might have to go downtown or something else. But anyway, it's just been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for keeping up on Facebook and liking my posts. And we
Absolutely.
should have this up pretty soon. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in and being a part of Creatives Who Thrive. This is an amazing journey. I feel like I'm just like, hey, everybody, come on with me. We're going to go check out what other people are doing and see how they're doing it. And if it's working for them, maybe it'll work for you. So again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Deven, for the opportunity. I had a lot of fun. I hope it was good.